10, Joshua chapter 10 tonight. You ask what I'm doing, I'm setting my timer, or setting my stopwatch. I want to make sure that I'm not going 2.5 hours in, because as I mentioned this morning, going in spiritual enough here tonight to say, please go all night, we have nothing to do anyway. So, anyway, Joshua chapter number 10, as you're turning there, I got to go out to eat for the first time since sometime in March today. It felt pretty good. It felt nice to go to a restaurant, to actually have food that was not fast food. Unfortunately, the place that we went to did not have air conditioning, so we sat there and we sweated for, I don't know, hour and a half, but it was nice to sit down and actually have a good, and boy, it tasted so good. I mean, it was a 10 out of 10. And it was so much better than, maybe I just got so used to the Wendy's every now and then, or the Taco Bell, and whatever it has been, and it just felt good. So it's nice to get back to some form of normality. All right, now last week in Joshua chapter 9, we covered the Gibeonites and the trickery that they used in forming a league with Israel. And we talked about the wiles of the devil. And last week we sang that song, "The Mighty Fortress is Our God," and in that song it says, "His craft and power are great, and armed with cruel hate." And that's true. That's a true thing. And I was talking before the service with Jordan and Rachel about how just because you go to a Bible-believing church and a rightly divided church, and our church uses the King James Bible and we sing out of hymns, don't think for a minute that you can't be fooled by the devil. Don't think for a minute that you can't go off on some tangent about something that you have no business going off on. Pastor Bartlett used to say all the time, the devil can play that game. The devil can play that game. And just because you have a few things down right doesn't mean that you can't be tricked. His craft and power are great, and armed with cruel hate. So here we come to Joshua chapter 10, and this story in the Bible has so much application to us right now. Look at verse number 1, and it says, "Now it came to pass, when Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, had heard how Joshua had taken Ai, and had utterly destroyed it, and he had done to Jericho and her king, so he done to Ai and her king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel, and were among them." So here we see that the king of Jerusalem, he hears about what Israel is doing in the land, and he heard about the peace treaty that the Gibeonites had made with Israel, and he's getting wind of this. He's getting a little bit nervous about it. He starts getting scared, and the application there is that when the believer is living right, when the believer is living in Canaan land, doing what he is supposed to be doing, having victory over the flesh and serving God and fighting against the devil, the world gets a little bit worried. And the world doesn't like that. And here you have the king of Jerusalem, and here he is hearing about these things. And when you're victorious, people are going to hear about it. People are going to hear about the victories that you have, the battles that you win. It's going to make a little bit of noise. And by the way, people hear about stuff anyway. Isn't it funny how we kind of know what's going around? Other churches and other cities, other places. We just kind of, hey, I heard that your pastor resigned. I heard that you guys had 3 families. We just kind of hear things. That's how people are. That's how things tend to go. Look at verses number 2 through 4 in the text. It says that they feared greatly. Those are the inhabitants of Jerusalem. They feared greatly because Gibeon was a great city, as one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and all the men thereof were mighty. Wherefore Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, sent unto Hoham, king of Hebron, and king of Piram, king of Jarmuth, into Japhia, king of Lachish, and unto Debir, king of Eglon, saying, Come up unto me, and help me, that we may smite Gibeon, for it hath made peace with Joshua and with the children of Israel. So what we see here is that the king of Jerusalem, he fears what's going on. So what he does is that he gathers 4 other kings from surrounding cities to fight against the Gibeonites who had made peace with Israel. Now, the thing that to kind of notice here is that the Gibeonites weren't necessarily
on the side of Israel, they had just made a pact with Israel. They were just kind of neutral. They weren't really on one side or the other. They were neutral. And so this is really bothering the king of Jerusalem here. And so the lesson here is that the world can't stand or has zero tolerance for people who support Israel, for people who support the church. What we're seeing now, and this spirit of Antichrist, that's what everything is that's going on right now. I mean, this is 100% pure rebellion what's going on in our world today. And I believe that I believe that what we're seeing, at the very least, is the spirit of Antichrist. And here we are, who would have thought 20 years ago that police officers would be vilified? And that our media, and that the majority of people will be supporting the things that are going on. I mean, if you tell someone that you're against the rioting, you're looked upon as a racist. That doesn't make much sense, does it? I mean, that's hard to understand. But here we see in this story that you have these 5 kings that they're going to go up to Gibeon here, and they want to smite the Gibeonites because they've made a pact with Israel. They have made this league with Israel, and they don't like them. They said, hey, let's go and attack them because they side with them, because they're close to them. So, it goes to show you that the one who is neutral when it comes to Christianity, they're still going to get hit with the fire because the world wants nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that. And again, you go to where we are in our society right now. I just heard a story that there's a coach from Oklahoma. I believe it's Oklahoma. And he was on TV recently, and he was wearing a sweatshirt that had a conservative news station on his sweatshirt. He since had to apologize on public TV about wearing a conservative sweatshirt. What? Talk about intolerant. And this crowd that has made him apologize is the crowd that claims that we're intolerant. Are you kidding me? Why should someone have to look? If somebody came in here wearing a CNN sweatshirt, I would look at them and in my head roll my eyes. I would be kind to them, but I would think, I wonder if that's a weird sweatshirt to wear to church. But I wouldn't make them apologize. I wouldn't even make them take it off. I would let them wear it. I don't care. That's not what's going to build a wall between me and somebody else, for crying out loud. But to make someone apologize because they're wearing, this is where we're at. This is where we're at. And notice how Hollywood will make believers in Christ look so hateful. The average person walking down the street will look at a church and think that we're hateful. They'll think that we're spiteful. They think that we don't, that we're unkind, that we're intolerant. And they do this while they completely ignore the fact that Islam will kill people who are gay. Think about that. They don't care what Islam. I don't mean to be getting into this. I didn't mean to go off on this little tangent here. But understand that the religion of Islam will beat their wives into submission, but they're going to persecute the church because they think that we're intolerant. It's backwards right now. It's absolutely backwards. But look what happens to the Gibeonites when they're just neutral. Here they are about to be attacked by these 5 kings. They're standing here on middle ground, and the application there is that when you're in that neutral position, when you're trying to walk that fence, you're going to get hit on both sides. If you think of someone in the Civil War who's wearing gray pants and a blue jacket, you'll be shot in the leg by Union soldiers. You'll be shot in the chest by the Confederacy. So you're going to get shot on both sides. So if you're trying to, I think I mentioned it this morning in the message, if you've got one foot in the world and one foot in the church, it's just not really going to work out. You're not living for God, and the world's not impressed that you have one foot in the church. They're going to get you on that one. Joshua said, choose ye this day whom ye will serve. And as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And we as believers, we got to make that choice. Now, I know it's kind of weird preaching that here on a Sunday night, a hot Sunday night, on Father's Day when we have a low crowd. This is the core of the church, and I appreciate everyone being here. But you look at this story here with the 5 kings, and then you have the neutral Gibeonites, and then you have the army of Israel. Which one would you be in? It's a fair question, isn't it? Which one would you be in? Would you be in the neutral side of the Gibeonites, or would you be with the 5 kings who are going to persecute the Gibeonites? Or are you going to be with the army of Israel? Remember Moses in Exodus chapter 32? Who was on the Lord's side? Who is on the, we sing that song, who is on the Lord's side, who will serve the king? Well, that was a question that Moses posed to the children of Israel. He came down from the mountain and saw the way they were living, saw the way they were acting, and said, who's on the Lord's side? I mean, you guys claim to be on the Lord's side, but based on what you're doing, you're not really on the Lord's side. Look at verses 5 and 6 as the story continues. Therefore the 5 kings of the Amorites, the kings of Jerusalem, the kings of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, and the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon, gathered themselves together and went up, they and all their hosts, and encamped before Gibeon, and made war against it. And the men of Gibeon sent unto Joshua to camp Gilgal, saying, slack not thy hand from thy servants. Come up to us quickly, and save us, and help us. For all the kings of the Amorites that dwell in the mountains are gathered together against us. So we see here in the story that Joshua we see the 5 kings that they gather themselves together to come into Gibeon. Now imagine being in the city of Gibeon, and here you are having a nice peaceful day, and all of a sudden you look out and your city is surrounded by a whole bunch of armies. It'd be a pretty scary thing, wouldn't it? I mean, I think we'd all be kind of frightened if we looked out the window and our church was surrounded by troops, surrounded by different armies, surrounded by different things. And here the Gibeonites are surrounded, and they're about to go into battle here. And so what they do is they send somebody, they send a messenger to Gilgal where Israel is camped. And the messenger goes out to Gilgal to tell Joshua, hey, the Gibeonites are about to be attacked. Come quickly. I mean, there wasn't a, hey, when you get a chance. I mean, this was, come quickly. There's a war going on. We need your help. And so that's kind of how the storyline goes there. Now, these are the same Gibeonites that back in chapter 9, last week, tricked Joshua into making a contract with them that really spared their lives. Joshua couldn't get out of that contract. I mean, think about how Joshua felt in chapter 9. Here he is thinking that they come from a far country, and here they walk a couple days, and here it turns out they're neighbors. Oh, hey, wait, you said you were from a far country. Turns out that we're neighbors here, but they already made a league with them. They already made a covenant with them, and Joshua said, we're going to make you slaves because of that. But he didn't kill them. He spared their lives. But he couldn't break out of that. He couldn't break out of that deal. Now, if there was a time, if there was a time that Joshua could have used war to break that oath with the Gibeonites, it could have been right now. All Joshua had to do at that point was say, nah, we're fine. We'll let nature take its course. I mean, that's really all he had to do. Imagine him doing that. That's something that maybe many of us would have done. Imagine if you were in a long-term contract with the gym for the rest of your life, and you found out that gym burned down. Wouldn't you be kind of happy? Oh, that took care of that. Looks like I'm not paying that contract no more. Well, that's kind of what's going on here. All he had to say no, he could have let the 5 kings destroy the Gibeonites, and he would have never had to worry about the Gibeonites again. Well, look at verse number 7. So Joshua ascended from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. And the Lord said unto Joshua, fear them not, for I have delivered them into thine hand. There shall not a man of them stand before thee. And Joshua therefore came unto them suddenly, and went up from Gilgal all night. And the Lord discomfited them before Israel, and slew them with a great slaughter at Gibeon, and chased them along the way that goeth up to Beth Horon, and smote them to Azekah and unto Mekkedah. Now we'll stop there, and just for a minute. So here we see that Joshua, after all, he comes to the rescue. He and the men of war, they fight against them, and they chase them away. And if you look in verse number 11, it says, and it came to pass, as they fled from before Israel, they were going down unto Beth Horon, and the Lord cast down great stones from heaven upon them, unto Azekah, and they died. And there were more which died from the hailstones than them whom the children of Israel slew with the sword. So the men of Israel, they come down into Gibeon, and they chase them away, and they slay some of them with the sword. And the ones that are getting away, the Lord sends hailstones down and gets them with hailstones. And so several things to learn about this. Number one is that Joshua prayed about this one. If you look closely in verse number 8, it says, and the Lord said unto Joshua, fear them not, for I have delivered them into thy hand. Now, if you go back to last week and when in verse 14 of chapter 9, it says, "And the men took their victuals and asked not counsel at the mouth of the Lord." When Joshua made the deal with the Gibeonites back in chapter 9, he just assumed everything was okay. Didn't ask any kind of counsel of God. And look at the mess that turned into. Well, here in verse number 8, it alludes to the fact that God was talking to Joshua, and Joshua was talking to God. And God says, "I have delivered them into thy hands." He prayed about it. You know how important it is to pray for something? I mean, oftentimes we don't think something is a big deal. We think, well, all I'm doing is just, I'm going out of town for a couple of days. Well, why don't you pray about it? The Lord doesn't want you to go out of town for a couple of days. I mean, look, simple little things. Simple things. You look at some of the stories in the Bible, especially Old Testament stories where, people just went to sojourn somewhere, and their sojourn stayed into a long-term visit. Do you remember when Rebecca told Jacob to go down and just sojourn so that your brother doesn't find you? Well, he did, and he never saw his mother again. His sojourn for a couple days turned into 20 plus years. 20 plus years. You better pray about things in your life. We ought to, and sometimes we just do things because we're so busy, we're so caught up in the things going on. But learn that you need to pray. You need to pray about things, and Joshua prayed about this one. Now, the Gibeonites, being at peace with Israel, what they represent in this story is really the neutral believer, which is kind of the carnal believer. This is the person that is a Sunday morning person. This is the person that has absolutely no Bible knowledge. That they probably come maybe 20 to 30 times a year to church. There's no chance of them ever being here outside of a Sunday morning. And these people are members of every church, whereas they'll come for years and nothing changes in their life. They support the church by being there, but there's no desire to really serve God. There's no desire to grow. We've got to have a desire to grow. I would hope that everybody in the room tonight would have a desire in their heart that in 2 months from now, I hope that I'm seeing more fruit. In several months, I hope that I have more Bible knowledge. And again, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. We're here on a Sunday night. If you're here on a Sunday night, that means that you're here for the right reasons. I mean, this isn't a fleshly night. It's not like there's going to be, who's going to be here tonight? You came on very good merit tonight. But so I assume that everybody here is here because you want to learn something, because you want to grow spiritually. But you have the Gibeonites, and they represent that believer that they just kind of come, and some people have a really shallow testimony, maybe a vague testimony, and they're just kind of there. And here we see that Joshua, who would be a type of the sold out believer, has to come and rescue them. And you think about it, and that crowd of people who is of the sold out crowd, the ones who are witnessing, the ones who are living for God, trying to live a righteous life, they might look kind of extreme to the carnal Christian. You think about like Lot and Abraham, and I'm sure that Lot probably thought Abraham was kind of weird. I mean, really, you look at Abraham or you look at Lot going down to Sodom, and I'm sure that when Uncle Abraham got brought up with his kid, my Uncle Abraham, he is so, he's got these rules, and they go to church all the time, and we go to church, we don't go all the time, but here you have Joshua, who is sold out, and he has to rescue the one who is carnal. And even though there are plenty of Lots that are out there are plenty of Gibeonites that are out there. The Gibeonites might think that people such as Joshua are strange. They might think that people such as Abraham are strange. But when something happens, they know who to call. That's who they call. If any of you got horrible news tonight, maybe you got bad news from the doctor, you're not going to call a carnal Christian to have him pray for you. You're going to call someone who knows close to God. Right? Does that make sense? And that's what happens here. Is that the Gibeonites, they realize that they're in desperate need. They're not going to be able to win this battle. So they go ahead and they call Joshua. And we've seen in the past, we've had people contact us, or there was a team that used to go here years ago that got a hold of Amanda one time and said, hey, could you witness to my friend? They're lost. Well, sure, but why can't you witness to your friend? You ought to know how to lead someone to the Lord. And, that's a type of that right there. So this is kind of what this story represents here. Now, Joshua did the right thing by saving them, even though he didn't have to. Even though they didn't deserve it, because these were the same Gibeonites that fooled him the week before or a couple days before. They fooled him. They didn't deserve to be saved. And you can sit there and shake your head, but who here deserves to be saved out of this crowd, right? I mean, well, I wouldn't have saved them. They didn't deserve it. Well, none of us deserve the salvation we got, did we? No. It's exactly right. None of us did. No one here has earned it. No one here is like, well, I understand why God saved me. I'm such a gem. No, you're not. Especially if that's how you think. But you think about the contrast between Joshua doing this to the Gibeonites and King David. Remember how King David used war to get rid of Uriah? It was like the opposite thing. Because back in King David's day, after he had sinned with Bathsheba, he had to get Uriah kind of out of the picture there. Otherwise, he was going to find himself in a whole heap of trouble. So he used battle to put Uriah at the hottest part of the battle, and at the most dangerous part of the battle. And there Uriah died, and there David thought that, you know what, I got away with my sin. Of course, we know that he didn't, and of course he learned that he didn't a little bit later on. But look at the contrast between those two sins. Between those two things right there. David tried to hide his sin by battle, and here Joshua could have gotten rid of that whole league that he made with the Gibeonites there. And really the lesson that we can learn from this is that Joshua could have let him die, but he didn't. He didn't. And to the carnal Christian, we need to exhibit grace. We need to exhibit grace to them. I say them as if like I'm not a carnal Christian. We're all a carnal Christian to a degree. And you know what? No matter where you go, someone else is going to be more spiritual and more sold out than you. We can sit here and say, boy, we're spiritual. We still use the King James Bible. We still sing out of hymns. And there's churches that would look at us as being just really liberal because we do things a certain way. It's all relative in some ways based on what vantage point you're looking at. There's places that I look at that think they're really conservative. I'm like, I wouldn't do that. That's crazy. And they look at what I do and they think they wouldn't do that because that's crazy. As I've said before, you know what a liberal is? A liberal is somebody who has one less rule who has one less rule than you do. Well, he's a liberal. And you know what a legalist is? A legalist is somebody who has one more rule than you. We can have the same, we can agree on everything, but he believes his hair shouldn't touch the ear. I believe it can. He's such a legalist. It's like, stop it. Sometimes some of the things that we get caught up in. But when it comes to carnal Christians, when it comes to people who we would look at as a type of lot, their problems might be self-inflicted, but we need to exhibit grace. And there's times, and you go back to all the years of being in the team group, and don't do this, don't go there, don't touch this, and you're in that position of like, boy, I could easily say I told you so, but that's not the right thing to say either. We need to exhibit grace, and the same thing when it comes to lost people as well. Should we let lost people just die and go to hell because we don't feel like witnessing to them? I'll just let them die. It's not my problem. And sometimes we take on that attitude because it's hard. Because after all, they mock us, don't they? They don't like us. They say things about us. They think that we're a certain way. They think that we're intolerant. They think that we're mean. They think that we're prejudiced. They think all sorts of things that are not true. Turn to Ezekiel chapter 3 real quickly. Ezekiel chapter number 3. Ezekiel chapter 3:18. And this is a lesson here. And this verse is pretty convicting. Ezekiel 3:18, it says, "When I say unto the wicked, thou shalt surely die, and thou givest him not warning, nor speakest to warn the wicked from his wicked way to save his life, the same wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at thine hand. Yet if thou warn the wicked, and he turn not from his wickedness, nor from his wicked way, he shall die in his iniquity, but but thou hast delivered thy soul. That's pretty convicting, isn't it? Are you warning the wicked tonight? I mean, do you tell your neighbor about Christ? Do they know where you stand? I mean, look, I know it is so easy to get caught up in how big. Look, all of us are busy. I mean, all of us live a very busy life, and we're here and there and to and fro and doing everything. And I don't have time to pass out tracts. I don't have time to witness to this person. Listen, there's a lot of times that I see someone with a flat tire on the side of the road, and I think I need to stop and help them and maybe give them a tract and be a good testimony. But you know what happens 99.999% of the time? I'm busy. Like, I would, but I can't. I'm on my way to church. I'm on my way to work. I mean, then you start playing that mind game, thinking, well, what if I'm like 20 minutes late to work because I witnessed something? I mean, like, what should I do? What should I not do? But we're always so busy. But are you warning the wicked? I mean, blood's going to be on our hands. That's kind of a scary thing, isn't it? You need to warn the wicked. Look at verse number 12 as this story moves on. Then spake Joshua to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Joshua? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and hasted not to go down about a whole day. And there was no day like that before it or after it, that the Lord hearkened unto the voice of a man. For the Lord fought for Israel. Last 10 minutes or so, I want to talk about this story in the Bible. If you've ever taught Sunday school, you've taught this story. You've heard this. How many times, George, do you think you've come across this story? A few times, countless times for a lot of people. I mean, this story is a very famous story in the Bible, and ironically, it's one of the most disputed miracles in the Bible. Now, isn't that weird? Why would it be disputed? I'm not just talking amongst worldly people. I'm talking about Bible scholars. I'm talking about Bible professors. It is disputed amongst them. And here you have Joshua praying to God in this battle to let the sun and the moon stand still, so Israel could avenge themselves. So they could finish the battle. So they could win the battle. Now understand this: that every miracle that ever happened in the Bible defies logic, right? I mean, here just a couple verses before this, there were hailstones that came down and killed the Amorites. How come people have no problem believing that? Isn't that kind of crazy too? I mean, I believe God parted the Red Sea, but making the sun stand still, I don't know. You turn the water into wine, right? Why do you believe that? Why are you willing to believe that a serpent spoke in the Garden of Eden? Balaam's ass talked. You're willing to believe that, but you're not willing to believe that God made the sun stand still. And people say, well, the sun can't stand still. The earth would have to stand still. So the Bible doesn't know what it's talking about. Okay. Well, I will say this. And the meteorologist says the sun is going to set tonight at 9 o'clock. The sun is going to set tomorrow at 9:30. Or does the sun set and rise? No, that's just a saying. The sun doesn't literally set and rise. That's just a form of a saying. There's a lot of things. Like, I've been to every corner of the earth today. You believe the world is square? No, it's just the wording of something. I mean, that's not saying that. That's not saying that you believe that the earth is made out of a square, which, by the way, the flat earth crowd was growing by number. Isn't that crazy? I mean, isn't that crazy? I mean, you would think that with all the technology that we have today that it would be growing smaller, but I don't know. Boy, the internet is full of so many things that are weird and interesting, and I think it has made a lot of people very dumb. But anyway, we'll talk about that another day. But why this miracle is disputed, I don't know. Maybe if Jesus had turned the moon into wine, they'd believe that one because they really like that a lot. I don't know. God created the world in 7 days. Why don't you dispute that? Or actually, people do dispute that. But I mean, you're willing to believe that God created the world, but you're not willing to believe that He
made a day last longer than what it normally would last. You don't believe that he could just stop the universe? That's what he did. He stopped the universe. Well, he can't do that. Let me tell you something. God created the universe. He does not have to obey the rules of science. The rules of science obey him. It's kind of that simple. Why people don't understand that, I don't know. Why they don't understand that, I don't know. I mean, the man who makes the watch can manipulate the time on the watch, correct? Does that make sense? I mean, I can take the watch that I have right now and I can change the time on it. Oh, how can you do? Well, I can do that because I'm wearing the watch. The watch can't do it itself, but I can do it myself. These should be simple things. And, you know, it is amazing sometimes when you look at how many people are critics of the Word of God. Why would someone be a critic of the Word of God when they don't have it? You know, are you a critic of the Word of God, or do you believe the Word of God? I mean, the Word of God should correct us, not us correcting it. But we're living in a generation where people correct the Word of God. You know, a lot of people don't like to hear that the Word of God is perfect. It bothers them. You know, when you hear that the Bible is perfect, when you hear that it's inerrant, it takes away your final authority. But when you can correct the Bible, and when you can say, well, this really didn't happen, and the translators messed this up, and, you know, in the Greek it says this, and blah, blah, blah. You know what you're doing? You're becoming your own authority. That's essentially what that is. You're becoming your own authority. And it absolutely amazes me how many people don't like that. And you know, we had a couple visit here about maybe a year ago or so, nice couple. And they asked me what I believed in the Bible. I said, I'm strong King James. I said, and by strong King James, I mean, like, I ain't gonna move on that one. And they said, thanks, but no thanks. They didn't like that. Okay, well, you know what? I'd rather them find out then than join the church and realize that it's not for them. I guess that's the right way to do it, I suppose. But why would that bother you so much? I believe the Bible. That should be a pro, not a con. Ain't that funny? So you'd rather go hear somebody else that's going to correct the Bible? I mean, you know, I would rather stand before God and be ignorant of the Bible being wrong than to stand before God and to correct it and be wrong. Right? I mean, doesn't that make sense? I mean, what if let's say the translators messed up some things and they're translating the Word of God, and you know, let's say there's some things in the Bible that maybe we took too literally. But when I stand before God, at least I can say, hey, I believe what you said. I'd rather be wrong on that than stand before God and find out that everything that he said was true and I corrected it. You don't want to be the one to correct God or to change the words of God. Look at verse number 14. It says, and there was no day like that before it or after it, that the Lord hearkened unto the voice of man. For the Lord fought for Israel. So what we see here is God doing another great work. And you know, the spiritual application here in this text is that when the Lord, or when you're living in Canaan, when you're living right, when you're fighting for righteousness, when you're defeating the flesh and you're having victory, you're going to see some great things. You're going to really see some great things. And you think about this story here, and here at the end of this verse, it says that at the beginning it says, and there was no day like that before it or after. I mean, this was a great thing. I mean, imagine the ones that were there. I mean, could you imagine if you go home tonight and it's 11:30 at night and you're like, it's 100% daylight out there. I mean, it's still this. I mean, you would kind of remember that, especially if you needed that daylight to do whatever that you were doing. I mean, this was something that Israel remembered. But you know why they got to see this day? They got to see this very long day because they were living right, because they were living in Canaan. And when you're living right, when you're serving God, you get to see some things that are really neat. I mean, I look back at some of the things that I've gotten to see over the last 10 years or so, working in the teen ministry, and even as pastor of this church, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I mean, look, I haven't got to see the sun stand still for a whole day, but I've got to see people get saved. I mean, having that girl Jenny get saved a few weeks back, boy, that's a great thing. I mean, that's one of those go home and high five everybody until church starts up again Sunday night. I mean, that's a marvelous thing. That's a wonderful thing. Going to camp and seeing the kids get right with God. Look, you know, not every service at camp is one of those memorable services, but every kid in here
only a couple of them tonight, but every kid in here can tell you that, well, yeah, I remember that one year. I remember that one service. Every year there's a service at camp that just kind of stands out above the rest. I've been in services where there was no preaching. We never got to the preacher because the singing started and the altar call started, and you had people running to the altar crying, giving testimonies, and it's like, wow, look what I got to see. That's really cool. It's not cool as in like, hey, that's awesome. But that it is a cool thing to be able to see that stuff because you're in the ministry. I wouldn't trade this for anything. I wouldn't trade it for anything. You ever been in a church service? You felt like the message was written directly to you from God. Oh yeah. I've been in services before where, and in fact, there was a service, I've told the story before, there was a service about 5-6 years ago at Fort Faith, and I was sitting there in the back, kind of keeping an eye on the teenagers, making sure they weren't doing stupid things. Of course they were, but I was sitting in the back, couldn't do nothing about it. But when he started preaching, I think I was crying all the way through the message. It was like the Lord preached it right to me. It was about the unseen hand in 1 Kings 18, and great message. But one of those things I'll never forget. That was a day I won't forget. And that was one of those messages that as soon as he said, let's pray, I get away before the altar. Kind of, one of them things. I tell you what, when the Lord speaks directly to you, something you don't forget. Something you don't forget. Now, you know what? If I would have said, I'm not going to camp this year, I got too much going on, guess what I'd have missed out on? I would have missed out on that. You can go on and on and on with the things. Well, I'm too busy to get involved. I'm too busy to do this. I've got this going on, and I'm not ready. By the way, you're never ready. I remember when Amanda got pregnant with Molly, and I was telling someone like, man, I don't know if we're ready to have kids. And I think Bill Bratcher said, wow, Greg, you're never ready to have kids. Like, huh. Well, he was right. You're never really ready to have kids. You're never ready to. Say, well, we're going to have kids when we're ready. Well, then you'll never have them because you're never going to be ready. You say, well, I'll teach a class when I'm ready. No, you're never really going to be ready. Some things you just kind of have to do. And I'm glad I didn't hold out on things. I'm glad that I remember when Pastor Bartlett asked me if I would take over the team class. I didn't just say yes. Oh, sure, why not? I thought about it. I prayed about it because I thought if I do, that means I'm going to have to be here every Sunday. I can't be like, you know what? Because let me tell you something. Sunday mornings, going to Sunday school is not easy, especially set that alarm and you're kind of like, I don't have to. What's the worst that's going to happen if I don't come? I remember thinking, if I do, I'm going to have to be here. There's no ifs, ands, but about it. I tell you what, for all the sacrifice that's put in to the youth rallies that we've done here over the years, for all the sacrifice that's put in to go into camp, to every fundraiser that's not fun at all, hard work and sometimes minimal money, for all the stuff that we've done over the years, I don't feel like I've missed anything. I feel that it's been I've gotten to see some great things, and I think those men of war that fought and they were tired. They made that trip from Gilgal all the way to Gibeon, and that's a long trek. That's not like they just went from here to the woods out there. That's I think it's like 20 miles. They ran there, then they fought. I don't think they thought about how tired they were after the sun stayed up all that time. I think they went home and said, boy, we saw the Lord move tonight. We saw the Lord do a great thing. And let me tell you, if you serve God, if you give your life to God and say, Lord, here's my life, do with it what you want, I can promise you, you will not regret it. And the things that you might miss out on, you're not going to miss. As I've said before, when they asked Dr. Ruckman what he, being in the ministry for, 60, 70 years, what did you miss out on? Whatever it was, I don't know because I didn't miss it. That pretty much says it all right there. And when you're serving God, sure, you have the bumps, you have the bruises, you have the wounds. And there's some things that are hard hard to understand sometimes. But let me tell you, the joy, the joy is unspeakable when it comes to the ministry. The joy is unspeakable to see somebody get right with God. The joy is unspeakable to see visitors come in and people join the church. You can't, I mean, it is such a joy and such a pleasure to see those things. And I can promise you, and when I'm praying for the church and when I'm here by myself, there's some times I just look around and smell the roses and say, boy, God's been so good to me. I mean, why has he been so good to me? Well, what I'm saying is this: give God your life, give God your will, and see what he'll do. I promise you, you won't miss out on anything. Go ahead and close in prayer. Rachel, if you can come and play just a couple verses of invitation, just 251. Jesus, keep me near the cross. We just play that, and just play through a couple verses, and then we'll go ahead and close with prayer. Father, I thank you for the day and for your goodness, for your kindness to us, Lord. I thank you for the message. I pray, Lord, that you use it. Lord, I pray that you just convict the ones that need to be convicted and comfort the ones that need to be comforted, Lord. I pray for the invitation right now. I just pray that you bless it. In your son's name I pray. Amen.